today on Two Sides Live. Welcome to our first episode of Two Sides Live, a weekly show where two grown men, thank you Brian Fanzo, verbally battle over stupid topics. I'm your moderator, Krissy Buck, and I am joined by Jason Taves.
Hi guys.
And Taylor Stevenson.
Hello.
Our digital marketing experts told us to show off our culture. So this might be a huge mistake. We might be shooting ourselves in the feet. But here we go. Today we are debating, is cereal soup? So Jason, you have the burden of proof to prove cereal is soup, and Taylor, you will be debating that it is not. So how are we feeling about this?
We've already won. Cereal is a soup.
I mean, I was going to say I've already won by getting to be here with the two of you debating this lovely topic during the next hour-long conversation. But I think there's still a lot to be determined in terms of whether or not is it a soup or is it not.
No one likes a brown noser like the sales guy.
Yeah, kissing babies.
All right, well, fine. No, cereal's not a soup. Jason's wrong. He always will be.
So go ahead and tag your friends if you know any that have a strong opinion about this topic, but really just tag your friends anyway because we need people to engage with this video. So, okay, let's start off with a fist bump. Let's get this started.
There we go.
Okay. Round one. Taylor, I promised you I would let you go first.
All right. Well, so as any good debater would do, I've prepped for this conversation by going to the troves of the internet and figuring out what people are discussing on this particular topic. So We're going to walk through a couple of different things that I've seen being key points, you would say, as topics of discussion in this argument. Is cereal a soup or not, right? So the first one is in the nomenclature?
You can't even say it.
That's a big word.
Of soup itself, right? So a lot of people would contend that for a soup to be a soup, it has to be labeled as such. You've got tomato soup, you've got chicken noodle soup, right? Yes. So having the soup on the end of it makes you understand that it is, in fact, a soup. What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, I'd like to present...
First of all, your mouth noises are super annoying.
I'm enjoying my soup, Krissy. Calm down. So, I would like to step in and say, when you're using big words, it can feel kind of insulting to the everyday person. And I'd like to bring up what we would like to call the common man definition for soup. Right? I think that when you're talking about soup, it has to be simple, right? It is a liquid plus a food mixed together in which the liquid takes on the taste of the food and creates a delicious meal, which is what I'm consuming right now.
So you're saying that in terms of the definition soup, we can talk about anything that's just simply liquid and food.
Sure.
Combined.
Yep. And then it's a class of soup.
So
okay.
Is spaghetti soup?
It's a great question.
I think you could have spaghetti soup.
Or how about salad? So you put dressing, liquid, over salad. Does that become a soup?
But I think the role is reversed there, where the liquid is not taking on the taste of the lettuce, rather the lettuce is taking on the taste of the liquid, the dressing in that sense.
So name some things that would be traditionally deemed soup that don't include the word soup in it. Tomato soup, chicken noodle soup.
Gazpacho, which is a cold soup out of Spain. We have international users, so it's really important to remember their local traditions.
Right. Well, and I'm thinking here locally in Kansas, most of our viewers have never heard of gazpacho.
Gazpacho.
Gazpacho. But I did find that argument in some of the online forums. So we'll get to that in a second when we discuss whether or not it could be hot or cold. But
looks like we've both prepped.
So some other traditional soups, and I don't know that I would give you traditional on that one. Are there some other soups you could name that you make at home by yourself that you would claim are soups that don't have the title soup in them?
How about cold ham and pea?
Ham and pea. So would you call that traditionally ham and pea soup?
Some people might call it that.
You just call it ham and pea?
Yeah, I'd say cold ham and pea. Hey, Mom, can I have some cold ham and pea?
Right, but there's an inclination there that it's soup on the end of it. Right?
I'm going to have to say that I have only heard of ham and pea soup, not ham and pea.
Right, that's my point. See, because when you put soup on the end of it, then you understand what you're eating. You get the visualization. Because ham and peas exist, right? But in order for them to be a soup, you have to prepare them in some sort of special way in order to make them into a soup, right? So ham and pea is just the ingredients that make up that particular dish, but not necessarily make it a soup.
So Taylor, would you be able to say that perhaps what I've created here using the cereal plus the milk is corn pop soup?
I would give you that argument. Yes, I do think that if you were
to it, you do agree with me.
I think if you were referring to it as corn pop soup, then you would have a much better argument than is cereal soup. But see, that's kind of the logic process we're working through here, right? Because you wouldn't actually refer to that as corn pop soup. You would refer to it as cereal.
But that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I think we'll just call it sweet soup.
Okay, so we can get onto that. So here's another point that was raised, right? Hot versus cold. Now, when most people think of soup, they traditionally think of it as a warm food item that they consume, correct? So give me some examples in order to justify your argument that cereal is in fact soup, because I'm assuming most of you eat your cereal cold and not warm, because that's a whole other class, right? Warm cereal is a whole other class of things. Porridge, oatmeal, that kind of stuff, right? So give me some examples of soups that you would traditionally eat cold.
There's a good dill pickle soup recipe.
I've never had that. That does sound pretty good.
It's delicious, very good. We've got some cold ham and pea, as we've discussed. We've got gazpacho.
Right.
Yeah, we've got those. I think those are probably the most popular ones. I do realize that the majority of time, soup is consumed hot. Now, I would like to point out, I think that this right here, this corn pops and milk, it's a soup. Now, I wouldn't say it's soup. See what I did there? It's called a reduplicative,
right?
Which is a part of the English language that we use to re-emphasize something. It's like books, right? We can't just say books anymore. There's e-books, and then there's like books, right? Right? So I would say that by our definition, the question today, this delicious bowl of corn pops and milk is a soup.
Right. Well, so, I mean, I do get your examples of some of those traditional soups that you would serve cold, right? But it takes us back to another question that I came across, which was, were those dishes originally cooked in some capacity and then put into a fridge to make cold, right? Instead of the ingredients being all traditionally cold, combined together and then consumed like you would do with a bowl of cereal?
Oh,
that's a great question.
But I think you have to cook that grain to make it into what it is.
Well, right.
I think we see where the audience is swaying, Taylor.
Well, so, and by the audience you mean the two of you. I really like that.
I'm on.
I like what you
cereal.
did. I like what you did there. So, most of the time when we're talking about the soup itself, it has to be cooked in some capacity, right? So, in order to cook it, it requires a heat source, an external heat source, right? In order to cook. So therefore, when you just take the two ingredients, milk and corn pops, which we're using in your example here, and combine them together, there's actually no cooking being done, which means you haven't cooked a soup, you have prepared a dish.
So this is where I believe that this amazing sweet soup I have in front of me has an advantage over more traditional classes of soup. we don't actually have to cook it. Therefore, we're saving the environment. We're spending less cost on electricity or fuel source. And so it's probably the superior of the soups, which is maybe why it's the least known.
So you think that cereal is the best definition of soup that you could go for? Is that what you're trying to say?
I think that this sweet soup that I'm consuming right now is probably the top of the class. And like, you're choosing soup off a shelf, go with the sweet soup. Because the reality is here that we don't have to cook it. It just assumes the flavor of what's being put into it.
Well, and
that's the advantage of milk.
And you do bring
cook it, it's not great.
You do bring that is a valid point. So you bring up another interesting argument within this, in that most soups are considered savory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas traditionally, when you think of your cereal, savory isn't the thought that comes to mind, right? You're thinking sweet, traditional, kind of that breakfast sugary type. So is there any weight to the argument that soups are specifically defined as savory bowls or food, whereas cereal pertains to the quote-unquote sweet soup, which, by the way, is a term that Jason has made up / stolen from the internet somewhere for the purposes of this debate, because no one actually, who says sweet soup? When was the last time you saw sweet soup on the menu? Try to say that 3 times
Carol
fast,
Carol Ann here calls salsa chip soup.
So
that's a great definition, Carol. I like where you're thinking.
So, and one of the things I think is really important to denote here is how you would order or talk about these particular things when you were describing them to other individuals, right? So, Carol, while I appreciate you chiming in here and calling salsa chip soup, I'd be curious to know when you successfully ordered that from a restaurant as chip soup, or if they would just look at you with a blank stare, which is what I think would happen if you walked into a breakfast restaurant and ordered a bowl of sweet soup.
I'm glad you brought this up, Taylor. All right, so I would like all of you to imagine, because I've been in this scenario a couple times, and it's completely terrifying. You're in a foreign country, you don't know the language, you can't speak it at all.
Let me give you some.
When we were in China, it was like crazy, like everything was different. We couldn't order off of a menu other than pointing to a picture. Now, if all you were able to say in the local language was sweet soup, and you were trying to order this plus this, do you think that they would end up understanding what you're saying and bringing that to you combined as this bowl?
Well, I think if you had milk and a bowl and a box of cereal and you combine them together in front of the person, I think they'd be able to figure out
you described
that you were talking
soup
about putting together a bowl of cereal. But I don't necessarily think that they would understand that based on the words that you've chosen to use to describe that. I think they would just get it by the actions and the props that you have there with you.
I think as Shiloh, my daughter, as she grows up, and we're teaching her how to speak, one of the ways that she may communicate with us that she likes cereal is by calling it sweet soup.
Well, I think that would be really adorable for you to teach your daughter that. Just know that when she goes to first grade or kindergarten or pre-K and she shows up and asks for sweet soup on the first day, everyone else is going to look at her like she's a weirdo.
No, they'll ask, well, honey, what do you mean? And she'll say, like,
cereal.
Like,
and she'll say, like, cereal.
She'll say,
because that's
like for
what
breakfast.
It is, right?
Like for breakfast,
right?
sweet soup.
Yeah, she'll be like,
okay.
oh, yeah.
I know exactly what
she'll
you mean.
Like
Here you
cereal.
go.
And they'll be like, oh, that makes perfect sense because that's how we call it.
So I do want to bring us back to kind of the conversation, the big picture question that we're answering here. Is cereal soup? I think that there's different classes of soup. And I think as we're talking about soup as an overall definition for all the subclasses, the hot soups, the chicken noodle soups, the sweet soups, like we're talking about cereal falling into that as the hierarchical structure when it's mixed with milk. I would say this is cereal. There's no liquid combined with it. When have you ever had cereal that is mixed in juice or water? It's not, yeah. Like,
skim milk is water.
Let's go back to soup.
But you bring up a really great point, right? Which is that you just held up that box and told everyone that that was cereal, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So it's cereal in the box, and it's cereal in the bowl, right? Because you would still refer to that as cereal in your bowl, right?
But this right here, what we're talking about is sweet soup.
Right. But so let's get away from the sweet soup idea. Just say cereal as it's defined.
Just
Is cereal defined as cereal in the box, or is it only cereal once you put it in a bowl with milk? Because see, if the question is just, is cereal soup, and you just said that just that box is cereal, there's no argument. It's just stuff in a box. There's no liquid to it, right? So completely irrelevant.
I think the fact that this is a cooked grain makes it cereal. I think when you put cooked grains, like you were talking about, or cooking things, when you put cooked grains into a liquid, it creates a soup.
Okay. I think that wraps up round 1. I don't know who the winner of that is.
You can vote in the comments below. Let everyone know.
Let's go through the comments. So,
don't
first,
forget the sales guy is paid to spew things.
Our CEO thinks this is hilarious. I think it's painful. But I appreciate that assessment.
This may be the last time we do this.
The first and the last.
It's like a rocket.
Marisa over at Hex Code, she's gonna be on the stories tomorrow. She'll be here in our office. Gazpacho was a special today at Two Olives where we had lunch, and we were not invited.
Yeah. First of all, Marisa, that's awfully rude of you. Second of all, I do have a question. How is that served to you? Was it served to you in a bowl with a spoon? Because I was also reading that you can drink it in a glass, which makes it more like a smoothie to me. So, like, I mean, now we're starting to blur the lines between soups and smoothies. I feel like that's a whole nother conversation.
That is a whole nother conversation because that could be fruit soup.
But that was my one argument against that particular soup, is that if you can drink it in a glass, I'm not really sure that it qualifies. Because, see,
cup of soup.
In theory, you could, but you still consume that. You don't drink a cup of soup, right? You're just not consuming. Would you do it with a straw? Like chicken noodle soup?
If it's a big straw.
Here you go. See, why don't you go ahead and consume with that?
Yeah.
No.
You can drink soup out of a cup. Campbell's.
See,
the microwave, and then you put the lid back on it, and
you're drinking the broth. You're sipping on the broth. You're not really consuming the whole soup at that point. I mean, like miso soup, I guess you would just drink, right? Yeah, I guess I can kind of see that. But if you drink it, if it's out of a cup like that, I mean, when you think a cup of soup, you're not thinking, you're gonna drink a cup of soup out of this?
Better than a cup of cheese.
Carol Ann, who's killing it with the comments today, says pho. I think this was when you were saying, name some other things that are like soup but are not called soup.
See, I've also learned through my research on this particular topic that my knowledge of soups is very limited.
And speaking of that...
So you heard it first. He doesn't know soups well. I understand what soups are, the full gambit, the sweet soups, all the way to the international, non-traditionally named soups. Therefore, sweet soup.
John Messman wants to know, is stew a soup?
No, see, stew is different. Stew is different than a soup. Because stew, the liquid helps soften the materials in it, but it's not, the liquid is not actually part. You don't drink your stew when you're done with it, right? You don't consume the broth of your stew.
You shouldn't have given him the hard side of this debate. It's like watching a train wreck.
How do you know that the liquid softens the ingredients?
Because...
And that's what makes it a
believe
stew.
it or not, I know how to cook. I mean, sort of. I sort of know how to cook.
Haley, we need you to weigh in here. Does he know how to cook?
Yes.
I know how to grill.
Grill master.
We've gone from cooking to grilling.
You don't grill soup, so...
But the gazpacho was shrimp, Taylor Stevenson, she says.
Oh, I'm still having a hard time. I read a recipe. I'm still having a hard time conceptualizing what that tastes like at all. Other than like a giant smoothie is kind of still what I'm thinking.
Okay, moving on. Round 2. Jason, I'll let you lead this round.
All right.
What is your argument against Taylor about cereal soup?
Well, I think we've already covered this.
Well, we need to cover it some more because that's what's written on the door in front of us.
Cereal is a soup, by definition. So one of the most popular conversations around cereal not being a soup is the fact that there has to be like vegetables inside of. Now, I've very carefully crafted this conversation today. Corn is a vegetable.
Well, okay.
You find it in the produce aisle. Corn is a vegetable. Corn can be in this box as cereal mixed with milk. All of a sudden, it becomes a soup.
Yes. What are the ingredients? First ingredient on that?
Milled corn.
There it is.
Milled corn.
There's also soybean.
Soybeans. Yeah, milled corn and soybeans. Now, sugar is also another plant, most popularly from sugarcane. So there's multiple plants inside of this bowl of sweet soup.
See what you did there, though. You told everyone that there were vegetables in there, but then you just described some plants, right? So
yeah, it's a mixture.
Are you gonna contend here that sugar is a vegetable? Was that the argument that you were just making?
No, I said corn is the vegetable and soybeans are the vegetable.
And then you said, and sugar's a plant, so that qualifies as a vegetable.
And I said there's multiple plants inside.
See, you're misleading people there.
When you go back and read the captions provided by Quick, that's what we do.
Yes, that's what we do.
You will see what I said.
All right, well, I can't wait to be proven right. Go ahead and upvote me at this particular point in time in the video.
This is the worst idea we've ever had.
So, all right. So I think what we've decided is it comes down to two things, right? It comes down to our definition of soup, and it comes down to our definition of cereal. See, because your contention is that soup is a classification, or cereal is a classification of soup, and I think cereal is a classification unto itself, right?
I think that cereal is an ingredient to sweet soup.
Well, and here's my great
Just like beef.
Here's a really good way to look at it, I think. When you go to the grocery store, and you walk in and you're looking to buy two things. You're looking to buy soup and you're looking to buy cereal. You go to the same aisle?
You're asking the question a little biased, Taylor. It's like if I said, if you're going to the grocery store and you're looking to buy chicken noodle soup or you're looking to buy chicken, do you buy the chicken from the soup aisle? No.
No, you don't.
Cereal.
Because those two things are not the same.
Cereal
One
plus
is an
milk.
ingredient in soup.
Cereal is an ingredient, milk is the other ingredient.
Oh.
Just like chicken is an ingredient,
Right.
water is the other ingredient, right? All of a sudden we're making some chicken noodle soup. Add some noodles, we're ready to roll.
See, my thing is that the classification of cereal, right, because you're saying that it's a subcategory of soup, would mean you'd find it on the soup aisle, right, with all the other soups. Just like when you go to the meat aisle, you find chicken because it's a meat.
Taylor,
right?
I'm simply saying that cereal is an ingredient to soup. I'm saying that sweet soup is a subcategory of soup.
So you notice, everyone, how the debate has changed from is cereal a soup to is sweet soup, the newly defined term by one Jason Taves that he has made up / pulled off the internet. Is sweet soup a soup, right? Just so everyone understands the transition that we've made from cereal being soup to sweet soup being soup. See what he's doing there?
I mean, it goes back to your chicken noodle soup debate. Is it just noodles or noodle soup? Like, we're not talking about cereal by itself because how would you ever consider this?
Right, and some would argue because
we're
that
talking
is
about
not a
the
soup.
mixture of it.
So I read this. So that would be considered cereal in milk, right? So maybe you think of it more as a garnish.
As a garnish.
Right, so cereal in milk, cereal in a particular substance.
So the milk is taking on the flavor of the cereal?
Because you could also...
Like water takes on the flavor of the ingredients to create soup?
So it'd be like a garnish, it'd be an addition to the flavor of the cereal. Because you can eat that cereal by itself dry, right? You don't have to add milk to it.
Oh.
As a matter of fact, there's different kinds of milk you could add. Almond milk, chocolate milk, soy milk. Are those all different kinds of soup? Because we're talking about chocolate pop soup.
I think what we're doing is we're changing the broth of the soup. Just like beef broth or chicken broth.
Right.
I mean, chocolate broth.
So
milk broth.
This is a really good point.
You're right.
So in order to be considered a broth, in order to be considered a broth, oftentimes, in order to get to the soup level, you have to cook something in the broth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your argument is that you would just consume the broth, or you would just consume the cereal, right? Without a broth at all, right?
I don't know what psychopath eats cereal without milk in it.
Some people love dry cereal. I guarantee there's somebody watching on here who's going to comment that they only eat their cereal dry.
I'm sorry, find a counselor near you.
So my point to this is that with broths, you don't normally just drink them by themselves or consume them by themselves. You'd be kind of weird if you're just drinking chicken broth, beef broth. I don't even know what other kind of broths there are. I'm sure there's more out there.
Now,
But you don't drink them by themselves, right? Whereas milk, your garnish on top of your cereal, you can consume by itself.
I think people do, in fact, drink chicken broth for the multiple health benefits that it does bring.
I sip.
All right.
Yes,
all
I
right.
sip broth. Okay, so this really stinks, but our transmission got interrupted again. Yeah.
Is that because of our internet services, or
I'm not sure. I'm
are
not
we still
sure.
live?
No, we're not live, but we're still recording. So let's go over some of these comments that we got towards the end. Let's see. John Messman. Man, he has so much faith in us.
John Messman, you are a legend.
This is deep. Next subject should be how to solve world.
But see, like, I thought
That's
the
too
premise-
intense.
Yeah, the
We're not
premise-
that smart.
Yeah.
The premise of this show is stupid topics, right?
Yeah, I don't feel like world hunger is a stupid topic.
It's a very serious topic. Way above our pay grade. Maybe we should get paid more. Then we can talk about that.
We also made him hungry. I'm a little hungry too, actually.
I'm not. I had my sweet soup.
Mike Mathia. Why don't you go ahead and read that?
Taylor has a great point about cereal and soup being on two different aisles. I'm leaning towards Taylor's side, but the truth will be revealed after this show.
How? Who's going to reveal that?
It's going to be revealed by Mike himself.
The internet will reveal it.
The interwebs. And then John Messman also says, bread is on two different aisles, regular and frozen. I don't buy it.
Oh, Messman's on the soup camp. He's cereal as a soup.
I'm just saying that in order for it to be a subcategory of soup, it would be listed with all the other soups on that aisle.
There is a secret, guys. Like, and no spoilers, it's coming right after this video, but I will show you one quick hack onto how to make your supermarket trip the most fantastic sweet soup trip you will ever have.
That sounded like something Donald Trump would say. This is going to be the most fantastic supermarket trip we've ever made.
He's already making up words, so...
Sweet soup? That's not a made-up word. First of all, it's two
soup.
words.
I'm going shopping for sweet soup as soon as we get off this.
It's going to be the most fantastic.
I'll show Taylor how to do that, and I'll show all the rest of you the quick hacks that I've learned in creating sweet soup from the very aisle that says soup. Facts.
I'm going to go ahead and count that as your final thought.
Yeah.
Taylor, for any final thoughts?
My vote is with the people. I think the people will support me on this. Cereal is not a soup. It is a category unto itself called cereal. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I will lose or gain trust in our audience in this next, 24-hour period.
I think we've already lost trust with our audience.
I have confidence.
I believe in you guys. To support me on this.
All right. Well, that is the end of today's debate. There's no clear winner. That's why we choose these topics, because you really can't prove one way or the other whether or not one side is going to win. And so with that, I apologize from the Quick team for this horrible debate, but we will be back next week where we will be debating cats or dogs. I bet that's how that's going to go.
That's easy. Yeah, it's
It
a clear
is.
winner.
Obviously. I mean, I'm 1-0 so far, so...